There wasn't any, okay. Um, Basically what, there wasn't any space underneath the frame, so when we tried to do mite control, oxalic acid, we burnt the bottom of the frames. And also, there wasn't enough ventilation in there, and so it started to get moldy. So during the summer, it appeared like it was doing okay, but it just did not work very well for us. So perhaps if the box were slightly deeper with a little bit more ventilation and a little bit more room to work using, mite control, an oxalic acid wand, it might work better.
Did it have a screen bottom board?
It did.
Okay.
And so here, are some of the basic tools of beekeeping. And if you look at your manual, you'll see that there are a variety of hive tools. The one that's shown here is the most common. The one with the J hook is nice. I like that one. It makes it, to me, easier to lift the frames out. I haven't used the painter tool, but I've heard people say that the J hook hive tool looks exactly like a painter's tool. So we have been known in desperation to use screwdrivers, so we'll show up at the bee yard thinking we have everything we need and we don't. And so to move the frame around, we'll use a big screwdriver. In this case, I'll say you're the beekeeper. What works for you is what you're going to use. A smoker is a good idea to have. We try to use a smoker as little as possible, but we do have one. There's, again, in the manual, descriptions about how you get the smoker going. Some of the things that we have found is that you need to pump the bellows from time to time while you're working the bees, otherwise your smoker will go out. We learned not to put the smoker on top of a plastic hive cover because it melted it. We heard stories from people at the Inland Empire Beekeeping Association about catching the bed of their trucks on fire because they put the smoker in the back of their truck while it was still burning, and it fell over and caught their truck on fire. We're always very careful about where we put the smoker because there's so much dry grass around. We don't want to start a brush fire. We got a can that we put our smoker and our hive tools in, and we carry it around. One of the things that happened to us with that is that we put the smoker in there while it was still quite warm, and it burnt up all the oxygen and created a vacuum, and then it was impossible for us to get the lid of the can off. So now there is a nail hole in the lid of the can. So, let's see what else. Basically, to use a smoker before you get into the hive, you want to puff a couple of times into the entrance of the hive, perhaps lift the lid, puff a few times in there, and then take the lid off. And then gently blow smoke onto the top of your frames if your bees seem like they're aggressive or there's too many of them. How can you tell if your bees are aggressive? You can probably hear it, the noise changes. If you smell banana, that is the pheromone smell of aggressive bees. And I did not believe this until probably 2 years ago when I lifted the lid of a hive and I smelled banana, and I just basically shut the hive and decided to wait a while until I worked it. Another way you can tell if your bees are being aggressive is if they all stick their butts up in the air when you open up the top of the hive. That basically is a defensive mechanism. The bee brush is handy. It is helpful when you're harvesting your supers to get bees off of the frame, or if you want to look at something, You use it basically to gently get your bees off of the frame. Frame perches are nice. It's just a way someplace that you can put your frame while you're working your hive. We have one. We usually forget it. But when we've had it, it's been nice, not a necessary tool. I would say the hive tool is necessary, a smoker is necessary, and a scale is the next most necessary thing. So basically, you can use a scale to determine a lot of information about your hive without opening it up. And when you're a new beekeeper, you tend to open your hive more than is necessary. And basically what you're disturbing, I mean, the bees are used to living in this enclosed dark space, and when you open it up and expose it to light and air and things like that, you're disturbing the natural order of the beehive. And it would be like somebody coming in and, I don't know, taking a leaf blower and blowing all the stuff in your house around. So we were definitely guilty of that in our first year of beekeeping. We liked to open it up and see what was going on and stuff like that. As the novelty wore off, we stopped doing it. What you're looking for with a scale is, if you know when the nectar flow is, you want to see an increase in the weight of your hive. You might weigh your hive throughout the summer, because as you go into fall, you want your hive to weigh about 100 to 120 pounds. So a few years ago, we had drought, and our hives were doing really well. We were about, I think this was 2017, we were about to go on vacation. Most of them were up around 90 pounds. And we thought, oh, whoa, we're going to have a great going into fall. By the time we get back from vacation, they're going to weigh 100 pounds. We'll be set. When we got back from vacation, they all weighed around 70 to 75 pounds. And the reason was that because of the drought, there wasn't any nectar available for the bees, so they were eating their own stores. And so we started feeding right away. So a scale is a pretty important tool that you can have when you're a beekeeper. If you guys have been keeping bees, you all probably have clothing. The veil is the most important if you don't want to get stung in the head. When we started, we basically had a veil, and that was it. We didn't have a jacket. But after the first summer, I think I got stung on the neck and the face, and I decided I really wanted a jacket with an attachable veil. You probably all know that the clothing is very warm. We've never had full suit clothing. Probably would have been a good idea, because most of the time that I get stung now, I get stung when bees crawl up my pants legs. So they'll crawl up your pants legs if you don't tie off your pants legs, and they'll get up about the knee or the thigh, and they can't get any further, and then they'll sting you. And so I had an embarrassing time where one got all the way up to the top of my thigh, and it stung me, and I wanted to get the stinger out of my leg. And so I'm like frantically trying to get my pants down, and I ended up mooning an Eastern professor because I just wanted to get that stinger out of my leg. Anyways, gloves are very important. When you get very comfortable with bees, you can possibly work them without any gloves, especially in the time of the year when they're not very aggressive. But gloves are really important. And one thing that we see that new beekeepers do constantly is buy gloves that are too big. You want to buy gloves that are very, very snug. So Kevin, my husband, who is quite large, he wears size small gloves. I wear extra, extra small gloves. And the reason you want the gloves to be tight is that if they're floppy, you can't really feel what you're doing. So you want those gloves to be tight. And I don't know really why they have shoes in there. The only thing that I would say is just wear shoes that don't have any holes in them, because I have been stung when I've tried to work my bees in sandals, and getting stung on the foot is not great. And so
I just want to say one thing about the shoes
uh-huh.
is that don't wear your Skechers.
Oh,
You
what?
know, don't wear anything that can permeate through your
Yeah, I
stinger
mean,
through your shoes.
there's some fabric that they can potentially sting through. I mean, you're gonna get stung. There's just
Well,
no.
me, I wear Kevlar.
Yes.
I'd
Sherry's
rather be all dressed up and not get stung.
she's got the full
I'll
suit.
be quiet now. Okay.
So does anybody have any questions? They don't really have anything. There's a couple of other pieces of equipment people ask about sometimes. They don't have anything about it. Queen excluders in the manual. Queen excluders are basically a metal box that fits, or a metal square that fits on top of your hive, and it's got pieces of metal.
It's a grid.
That are basically big enough for the workers to fit through, but the queen is not supposed to be able to fit through them. And in our experience, a queen excluder has worked as a bee excluder, so nobody passes through the queen excluder. Other people might have different experiences with them, so if you want to try one, I've got a couple of queen excluders that I'd be happy to give to you. Let's see what else. They don't really talk about hive guards, the closures that are across the front of the hive. And that is something that you definitely will want. You can either make your own, or you can buy, or you can buy them, and they come with the hives. And they'll have a opening that is maybe 1 inch wide, and then they'll have an opening that's about 3 inches wide. And you can flip the piece of wood so that opening, you can have whichever opening you want, the bigger one or the smaller one. So like during nectar flow, you might want to have a bigger opening to your hive, and later in the summer, you might want to have a smaller opening so that wasps and other predators can't get into the hive. It's easier for the bees to defend the hive. So, are there any questions? No?
I have a question.
Okay.
So you don't use a queen excluder. So then when you're harvesting honey, like how do you keep the queen out of your supers?
So basically, in the spring, we go in, we move all the empty frames down to the bottom of the hive, and the frames that have brood in them down to the bottom of the hive, and we try to keep the top of the second box of the hive full of honey. And so we may go in like toward the end of June and move things around so that we have what we call a honey block. And that is the empty frames are down in the bottom box, and that's where you're hoping the queen will lay the eggs. The top box is basically full of honey, so she doesn't have any room to lay eggs there. And then you put the super on, and she's not going to move up to that super and lay eggs there. But we have extracted with brood in the supers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, not a lot of brood in the supers, but there has been brood in the supers. I mean, basically, when you eat raw honey, you're eating a lot of bee parts. That's why
Also-
I don't believe there's any such thing as a real vegan. Yeah.
I was gonna say if you do get brood in your supers, just kind of scrape it out or cut it out before you extract the honey, so you don't flavor the honey with grubs. But
I mean, yeah, okay. I think that's a mental thing more than anything else, because your honey's got, bee legs in
Oh,
it,
yeah.
wings, you know,
But
be
the juicy
hard.
grubs are a little hard to take.
I just read an article today that brood is now a delicacy in some places where what you guys are talking about.
That would not surprise me.
It's wanted now. Okay.
So in your experience then, do most people not use queen excluders?
I don't know, you know, I have to say, I don't think that many of the beekeepers that I know in our club use queen excluders. I do not think so, but frankly, it's not something I go around making conversation about, so I don't know for sure.
Okay.
How do you use your scale?
How do you use it?
Yes, do you just weigh like half of it or?
Yeah, you can do that and multiply by 2. I mean, it's not a exact science. We have eye bolts that are stuck into the bottom board on both sides, so we tend to weigh both sides and then just add it together. And so, you know, this spring, we had a hive that weighed 90 pounds at the apiary and 2 of them that weighed around 67 pounds. So, and the one that weighed 90 pounds has been split. I'm gonna have to, so, because it was bursting with bees. Excuse me for moving, I gotta go someplace where I can plug my computer in, it's telling me I have a low battery.
I will make a comment on the queen excluder. There are, for instance, a scientific beekeeper online, he still uses queen excluders. I keep one around just because there are certain circumstances where I may want to try to confine the queen to one of the boxes so I can find her easier when I'm requeening. So sometimes they're useful. I don't use it for the honey supers though, because you get a honey barrier and she just does not move up into the supers very often.
Yeah, and we don't requeen. If the hive is needs a new queen, we'll just let the hive queen themselves. So, okay, I will go on to number 4.